Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to our fifth annual Traveling with a Disability presentation and discussion. My name is Brandon Heinrich. I'm one of the co-coordinators of Downstate New York ADAPT's Accessibility Working Group and Transportation Equity Working Group. For those of you who do not know what Downstate New York ADAPT or ADAPT is a grassroots disability volunteer organization that strives to improve the lives of people in the community, living in the community. We help people to stay out of nursing homes and go into the community and stay in the community, and we fight for their rights. So we'll get into more about that later, but I'd like to start with a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. I want to first of all welcome everybody and thank you all for joining us. This is, as I said, the fifth Traveling with a Disability presentation. We've been doing this since 2021, and it is truly an honor to do these presentations every year and these discussions. Just a quick couple of housekeeping items. We are live streaming and recording the presentation, so if you ask a question or participate, you will be either live streamed or recorded, or both, and available for viewing, but that's just how that's going to be. I'll give a brief description of myself. I'm a white male, black hair, blue eyes, sitting in front of my computer at my desk with a coffee cup next to me, which needs to be put away. But I thank all of you for joining us. If you are interested in asking any questions, this is your opportunity to do that will come. You can definitely ask our presenters any questions or participate in your own way. So I'd like to just give an idea of how to do that. We don't have any phone users right now, but if they do come in, I will repeat it. If you would like to raise your hand, if you're on a computer and you're using JAWS, Alt-Y will raise and lower your hand. To mute and unmute will be Alt-A. To do that on the phone, the iPhone or the Android, if you go to the bottom of the screen, and you'll get the reaction button, and you can raise your hand from there. There's also, obviously, on a Mac, you do Option Y to raise and lower your hand, and Option A to unmute and mute yourselves. So without further ado, I'd like to get into our discussion. We have two fantastic speakers to start us off, Jessica De La Rosa and Jose Hernandez. And they're going to discuss their experiences traveling with disabilities, and now they have an additional situation going on. They're a baby, and so we're going to turn it over to Jessica and Jose, whoever's going to start, and take it away.
Yeah, now we have a mini traveler. Um, my name is Jose Hernandez. Thank you, Brandon. Jessica, you want to introduce yourself before I put up the slides?
Hi, y'all. I'm Jessica. I'm the voluptuous Puerto Rican, as I've always addressed myself with this group over the past couple of years. And I'm a nice Puerto Rican girl, fair skin, wearing a black shirt. Sitting next to my child who is currently eating dinner. Mm, Yes, so I love to travel, and so as a part of that, when I started dating Jose, I was like, dude, you guys like to travel too. And so now we've become a bit of experts, except in the baby area. I traveled with him twice. The last one wasn't great. The first one was good. So, but yeah, go ahead, Jose.
And yeah, I am I don't know, medium tone Puerto Rican with a
Not
messy
voluptuous
beard,
like me.
a messy beard, and in desperate need of a haircut, wearing brown shirt, but looks black right now. Oh no, this is a black shirt. I have a black shirt
Yes.
on.
Sharon
Yeah,
Freeman. Join the
Jessica.
meeting.
Jessica definitely warned me when we started dating, and right from the beginning, you better get on the program and get dating, get traveling. She actually got me on my first flight. Where was that to? Puerto Rico, right?
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't stop talking because I was so nervous. She was like, "Dude, shut up."
I was like, shut up, I just want to sleep. And he just said, la, 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 la,
It was the fastest 2.5 hours I've ever been on.
la.
So I'm gonna start the slideshow, start sharing. Hold on, I'm gonna reset that. Um, those who can see it, can you guys see the slideshow? Can you see?
Yes, Jose.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we can.
All right. So, Jessica, you want to do this?
Yeah. This slide is a picture of me and my doggie, who I recently lost this year, my little girl. But yes, so it basically says, I love to travel. I've been to so many places. I went to Haiti, Canada, Bahamas, of course, throughout the United States. And yeah, the other stuff is irrelevant now. You want to alternate, or would you like me? How do you want to do that? You didn't tell me.
You're the traveler.
Okay, so my first side is on airplane travel. So I try to be as prepared as possible. I remember when I got Jose on his first flight, I was just like, I got to make sure everything goes smoothly. Otherwise, oh God, do you hear him saying Dada? He sees
No.
you. Oh, okay. Um, I was like, I have to make sure that this trip goes off nice and smooth. Otherwise, I'll never fly again. So yes, Joseph. So when you're preparing to fly, it's so much harder now since COVID, but it's important to avoid any layovers, especially if you have any equipment you're traveling with, because it just makes the risk of that stuff getting lost greater. Um, you also want to make sure that you purchase your ticket on the cargo side of the plane, just so you can see everything coming in and out, especially your wheelchair. I usually take this opportunity to record the process, in case anything does happen. I have it, and I can say, "You see, I saw what you did." And also make sure when you are returning, you have transportation with enough ample time from the time it takes to get off the plane to get to the baggage claim.
Yeah, sometimes that can take quite some time, and you have to take into account sometimes delays. So yeah, make sure you give yourself enough time because the last time I picked up Jessica at the airport from North Carolina, the plane landed and they didn't bring her wheelchair to her for an hour later. But you'll share a little bit more about that experience in a little while. So this is a video of different wheelchairs being boarded. I'm just gonna play a couple of clips. So
Mute it.
So
Yeah.
someone is lifting the chair up onto the conveyor belt. Thankfully, some airlines have discontinued that practice, and now they transport it in one of the transport vehicles with a ramp, and the ramp opens up to the conveyor belt. So that practice is no longer done. But this
But
is
it's
when,
more at the newer airports. Just keep that part in mind.
yeah, it depends on where you're going. Also, if you're traveling international, you don't know what policies they're using. But this is why Jessica says to get your seats on the cargo side of the plane. This way, you can see this process in action, and if anything is damaged, you can quickly report it. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. Seat pans.
Okay, so and a lot of this is a wheelchair user, because that's what I am. I am a wheelchair user. So this one here, I make a sign. I try to make it as limited as possible, but I kind of get to the point where I'm watching you. Here's the number if you can't figure this out. I also included a picture of the lever that you push up and down to either freewheel my chair to push it, or to have it on drive through the joystick, which I don't typically allow. I usually cover up my joystick, but you'll see that in another slide. But I just give, my name. This is how you do it. I highlight the spot, and I put my phone number.
And in some instances, depending on where you're flying to, you might want to save space for maybe some Spanish because a lot of the ground crews are Spanish speaking individuals, but not all. Having it in multiple languages sometimes helps. So, well, as you can see, people with disabilities, and some of you might know, we don't travel light. And as for myself, I definitely don't travel light. I travel with my motorized wheelchair, shower chair, and a bunch of medical equipment.
Now, this has changed though, which I have discovered in the last 2 years now, it seems. Um, Pictured here, we have the shower chair assembled, and then the other picture is the shower chair in the suitcase. So that bag, what, weighs about 80 pounds, right?
about 60, 70 pounds, yeah.
And it travels for free. Recently, luggage, it didn't matter if, let's say, you had a wheelchair charger um in your suitcase with your clothes, that went as medical equipment. That no longer counts. Now it is exclusively medical equipment, only flies for free.
So
Oh,
if you have a bag that goes, that you're traveling with medical equipment, make sure that you separate that, um, because that bag is free. But if you combine it with your personal stuff, they actually ask you to open it and they'll go through it at baggage or when you check in. You was
people
gonna
ab
say something,
no,
Jessica?
just people abusing it as always. And I was just gonna say, Hoyer lift and wheelchair travel is also permitted. Well, I shouldn't say like your regular at home can't fold Hoyer lift, but like travel Hoyer lifts, and chairs can also travel for free.
Yeah, because when we went to Puerto Rico, not only did we take that that shower chair, we took that Hoyer lift that's in the picture right there. I don't think we took the sliding board.
I don't
It
think so
might
either.
it might have been in the suitcase. So this is welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah, so this is in the past couple of years have been really great to track your devices and your luggage. I think that's what they were created for your luggage. But it's also super convenient to put it in your chair. Put it in a waterproof case. Attach it to the chair the best way possible. Oh, I wish I had mine. Mine is in a waterproof case with a ring on it. So then you can attach it to the chair in a spot that it won't come off. I also put it in a spot that they can't see so they don't feel inclined to rip it off.
Yeah, so there's multiple options. You have the AirTag, you have the Galaxy Smart Tag 2, and you have the Tile, which are basically the same, depending on the device that you're using, Apple, Android. Um, so you can track your package. So if you open up your app and your chair is going to San Diego and you're going to Florida, you have a problem.
And at least you can track it. You'll be able to tell them, that you see where it is. Because one time my chair was like, "Where did it go? Vegas," and I was home, and I was just like, "Yeah, that's weird." So anyway, um, so service dogs. A lot of this has changed too. Some airlines want you to fill out a form in advance, so you got to check with like the individual airlines. Um, they do give me a hard time. Have had have given me a hard time about the leash and the dog. They want the dog on the leash, but we don't have to have the dog on the leash, blah blah blah. But when she walks through, obviously I'm not gonna hold her leash, but sometimes I'll take off the harness and all of that so they won't give me a hard time about it. Um, but then they're mad that she didn't have a leash on. But anyway, so to avoid problems, I keep the harness, I keep the leash on, and I have her ID. A lot of the times now they don't even want to see the ID. Towards the end, they didn't care. They cared more about a paper being printed off of their website than they did that.
Preparing for
Okay.
boarding.
Yeah. Go ahead. You go first, sir.
So when you're preparing to board, make sure that you document your equipment, especially the ones that you're checking at the gate. It's important to document all equipment before you check it, but at the gate, before you board the plane, you pick a spot that shows what gate you're at. You show your boarding pass, making sure that this is the flight and the time that you're boarding, and you take a 360 view of your equipment running, functioning, before
And
you
in
get
one
on,
piece.
and in one piece before you get on.
I usually like hold up and by the way, too, the rug is also an indicator of what airport you're in. They know according to the like there's no dispute. But I hold up my boarding pass and spin slowly and make sure you can see the chair in its entirety. And yeah, just in case. Just in case.
I
Um,
noticed that I think it was Delta. Was it Delta? They started doing the same. They started taking pictures of the chairs and attaching them to some kind of file that it's associated with you.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They had like a tablet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they also took pictures like if I had a scratch or something. Yeah, that
Uh,
did happen. And then make
and
sure you secure your gate claim tag to a spot it cannot come off on. And this would also be the time to request an aisle chair if needed. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So pictured here is my joystick. I got really lucky that where my joystick actually connects, it's close. It's not like tied up with a bunch of wires in the back. So I usually just unplug it. And oh, well, before I unplug it, I turn it on. I put it in mode. So this knocks out the joystick, from driving at all. And then I turn it off and then I unplug it. So even if they plug it back in, 9 times out of the 10, they don't know how to get it out of mode. And they still can't drive it. And then I cover it. Um, and I write, please don't drive my chair because you don't know what you're doing and it goes too fast. I obviously don't say that. I think it says don't drive, please, or something like that. I can't see.
and
But I
her
try.
and her chair actually really, really goes fast.
Yeah, it's too fast, too jerky, and anybody else will hurt themselves and then hurt my chair.
Boarding. You will always be pre-boarded if you need assistance. And
And
how to
have
stow items.
and have sold items, yeah.
I have stored items. So you'll get, if you needed, you'll get individuals that will help you to with the aisle chair. They'll help you into your seat and take the aisle chair away, and they'll help you put your items up at the top. Make sure you take off as much as possible from your chair. So if you have a headrest that comes off, your cushions and leg rests, take those with you and board them on the plane because loose items will get lost in the belly of the plane or on the way from the plane back to you, or from the you to the belly of the plane, and they're not going to claim it. It'll just disappear. Buckle your
Mm-hmm.
seatbelt so it doesn't drag or get caught on anything. Would you like to add anything? I think that's it. Um, My chair, I have a
Send them
power chair
out.
that has a center mount that doesn't come off and it doesn't go all the way back to the chair. And
So there's
I
a
came,
gap
yeah, there's a gap.
between his battery and the back of where his leg rests stop.
So in order to prevent damage, I devised or thought about a yoga block and put it behind to take up the slack. And then I lowered my chair so that the leg rests are sitting on that is sitting on that yoga block. This way, if there's any impact, the impact is taken up by the entirety of the chair, not just the leg rest.
Because if there was a gap between there, and let's say a piece of luggage, slid during takeoff or landing, it has the potential of using that empty space in the back to just break it, which would suck.
Yep. Deboarding.
So this is where I got screwed. Can I say screwed? I said it twice, so too bad. This year with our son, when we landed, I waited a little while, but not long, and they tried to get me off the plane, and I was like, "Is my chair there?" And they said no. And then I was like, "Okay, well, I can't get off the plane, and so my chair's there. I have my son. It's just he and I right now, and I can't hold him on a small aisle chair. I just don't have the balance for that." Shortly after that, they said, "Oh, your chair's here," and I was like, "Okay, cool." And usually I ask, "What color is it?" And I didn't for whatever reason. But anyway, I get in the aisle chair, I'm holding our son, and lo and behold, it's just a regular, stupid chair from the airline. And I lost it. They wouldn't let me back on the plane. I was trying to explain to them. I said, "You don't understand. I'm physically not safe holding my child, and they were like, "You're safer here than you are on the plane." Make that make sense. Anyway, it turned into a whole thing. I was on that thing for about 45 minutes. I almost peed my pants because I physically can't get up and use the bathroom on the plane. Um, and for longer flights, they do have an aisle chair, but at the time, Joseph had just started walking and I didn't feel comfortable, even using the aisle chair at that time. What do I do with him when the bathroom is already small and the chair takes up the whole bathroom? It was a whole thing. Anyway, so I was like real close to peeing my pants and it was a nightmare and I felt nobody would help me. I felt dehumanized, I guess. Um, the flight attendants, I'm like saying, "Can you help me? I feel scared." And because life is life now and my time is taken up a lot with Joseph and other things, I didn't even report it. And I hate that I didn't report it and it eats me alive till this day, especially now talking about it. Because somebody should have paid for it. Um, I don't mean literally like paid me something for it. I just mean like should have been disciplined for it. But anyway, so that is an example of what I mean by making sure that your chair is outside the door. If you're someone like me or Jose that physically doesn't have the balance to sit on an aisle chair for more than your seat to your seat, you know? And then at that time is also the time to check your chair for any damage. The minute you leave the airport, you can just put your toe out the door. They will no longer cover any damages. Now, recently, and I don't know a lot about this, but I heard now they've actually there's some law or something that was put in place that now they're not going to cover damages. I don't know how true that is. I know very little. I shouldn't have said it out loud, but I heard whispers about it. And so you and I should go look that up.
Definitely. What she's talking about is the current administration has put a stop or a pause to the Biden era air carrier um, access acts. I think it would strengthen the ones that were already in place. Um, we as advocates should continue to advocate for those um, laws to be implemented so that people with disabilities don't get discriminated against when they're traveling via air. Uh, Red Cap service.
On the phone. Oh yeah, that's the people that help you, through the security and all that. Actually, we should have took that part out because I don't think they take money anymore. I don't think they're allowed to take money anymore. But I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, they help you go through. You don't have to wait on any lines and all that fun stuff. And I mean, depending on who it is, you offer them a few bucks and you get through smoother.
Jessica's
Um,
mother, she usually travels by herself. She has severe CP, and when she gets off the plane, they help her from the plane to the baggage claim to the vehicle. So um, I usually give them a couple dollars for all that help because it
yeah.
is a lot of work. Red Cap service also applies to traveling on train and other services as well. They usually help you navigate, and for instance, in the Amtrak here in New York, you go to the Red Cap service, and when your train arrives, they help you to the actual track because there's so many tracks, you can end up at a few different ones, and you want to get on your train first. Aisle chair for bathrooms, you said that. All right. Preparing for your
Preparing for
destination.
audition. Uh-huh. This is a picture of me in Toronto. That was a lot of fun. Um, so you got to scout, accessibility stuff. So you check out your hotel, explain your physical needs, and you can request pictures of the potential rooms. Sometimes people are a little about it, but if you say, it's really important for your stay or whatever, they're usually really nice. Um,
When we went to Puerto Rico, the guy actually went up and sent us a video of
he
that
was
room.
great.
So that
Yeah,
was great.
Yeah. And like a lot of the frames are boxed frames. So like the legs of the Hoyer lift can't get underneath. So if you're bringing a Hoyer lift and you need that feature, that's something you might want to know too. So that way you don't get there and you're surprised you can't use your Hoyer lift properly. You can also ask them to remove things from the room. We had them remove like a chair, a couple of chairs and coffee table. It's like we don't need that. So they
Mhm.
took it out the room, no problem.
Made everything. It made it a lot more accessible. So yeah, this is me, Mayim, in actually Puerto Rico, and this uh room didn't have a box spring. It had a box spring, so we couldn't fit the Hoyer lift underneath. So to transfer, I needed to use the corner of the bed, but still had fun. Oh, research transportation. So Puerto Rico, although a U.S. territory, doesn't have the most robust transportation system. So what I did to get uh, accessible transportation there, I looked up the cruises, and since we were going to the San Juan, which is a cruise destination, if they have a cruise landing there, they must have accessible transportation for the people who land there. So I chartered the accessible bus. It wasn't too expensive, and it took me and Jessica, two power chair users, from the airport to our hotel room. And
Hmm.
thankfully, around San Juan, we could either roll there or take their actual public transportation. They have a bus that is accessible.
Hmm.
But
There's also other places that has paratransit, Boston, Miami. Their paratransit rules are different. Because New York City, we have 24/7 um bus, train. So because our transit system is 24 hours, so is the paratransit, but that does not apply in Miami or Boston. So you're limited to the hours, their windows. However, you can take your accessory from here, switch it to over there on a guest pass.
uh,
Um, go ahead.
when traveling to certain places, Canada, Washington, D.C. are examples of places that have very accessible subway stations. Toronto's trains were great. They were open gangway, and the entire platform was accessible to people with disabilities. It
Go
was
Andy
amazing.
Byford.
Mhm. So, yep, I was talking about the shuttles. I mean, the cruises and their shuttles. This is me sitting in the shuttle with Jessica taking a picture.
They could even take you to different places. Um, if you didn't feel comfortable using their public transportation, but it costs more.
Um,
If you
yeah.
don't have access to, travel equipment like we have the Hoyer lift, there's other places locally, like other organizations, like United Spinal in Puerto Rico. They could have probably hooked us up with somebody who could have let us borrow a Hoyer lift on our stay, or a medical supply place there. They also rent out a lot of this type of equipment.
When you guys went on the cruise, didn't they rent out
A
a
manual chair.
a manual wheelchair to get them around the excursions when they went on the cruise?
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to try to do certain research. I wish I would have taken this advice when we went to Toronto because my battery charger kind of died, and that was interesting getting back home. I arrived with a severely dead wheelchair, but it would have been nice to have had done research and found a place that I can either borrow or rent or purchase a battery wheelchair charger or forgotten
Mm-hmm.
equipment because when we went to North Carolina, I forgot the sling to the Hoya.
Mm-hmm. A Hoyer with no sling is just a fancy coat wrap.
And
Um,
thankfully, Amazon had its Prime, and we got it one in 24 hours the next day.
yeah, so that worked out. And it's also good, knowing local repair places too. So in case you have a snafu, we know somebody who got stuck in elevate.
Oh, that was in Niagara Falls.
Hmm.
There you go. This is you, cruise lady.
Oh yeah, I love me some cruises. So getting travelers insurance might be an option for you. Just so that you have some type of safety net in case there's an emergency. Um, Reach out to the Cruise Line Accessibility Services Department. They can answer a lot of questions about the room. And you need to fill out specific documents to secure the ADA room. They're really great, though, in my experience, at least with Royal Caribbean. I can't say about nobody else. Um, Other amenities on the ship, you might want to know if the pool lift works. Or one time when I was on a cruise, I did an escape room and there was a lift to the platform of the escape room, and there was an issue there. But if I'd known that, things could have worked out a little bit differently. And in the end, they fixed the situation, but it was a pain in the butt that I would have liked to had avoid. Um, and if you some some boats tender. So when the ship is too big and the port is too small, you need to go from your cruise ship to a smaller ship to the port. And a lot of the times that smaller ship doesn't allow a power chair. So what Jose was mentioning earlier was we rented a manual wheelchair. And that was in Florida. So the place we rented from in Florida brought it to us when we were boarding our cruise, and they picked it up from us when we came back from our cruise. So we had the manual chair.
We're gonna just give us a few more minutes. I know that running a little short on time. I want to make sure that everyone else has their time, but have a few more slides.
This right here is the bathroom inside of the ship. It was a lot larger than I thought it was gonna be. But I don't like those shower benches that fall down from, like, not fall down, but collapse down from the wall. Because a lot of them now have that extra support leg, and because I'm a nice, round, robust girl, I'm afraid. I just don't want to fall. I, I don't want to bust my tail, and because I also have brittle bones, that would not be good. So in this situation, I used um a plastic chair I found. I think it was somewhere on the ship, or
Might
it
have been
might have
on the
been in the
deck.
room. I don't know, but I found it, and it wasn't fabric. It was plastic and metal, and I was like, perfect. I'm taking this to the room, and that's what I did. I took it into the room, and I used it and I felt safe. But remember, you got to make sure you get something if you need something like that. You don't take anything that can get messed up, otherwise you're gonna have to pay for it. There's a couple of accessible excursion websites here, wheelchairescapes.com. Um, and this is, for I said that for the excursions. And the Accessibility Service Department is also a good one. And US owned islands tend to offer decent accessibility while other countries do not. But tipping goes a long way. Like in Haiti, I was a queen for a small amount of money, just being carried around all day long. It was great.
Didn't someone not even lend you their chair or something like that?
That was in Haiti. Some guy, he was a taxi driver in a wheelchair. And anyway, long story short, I needed a manual chair. That's why we learned to rent a manual chair. And so he would lend me his. Gave the guy $40 for the day to use his chair. It's great. Service dog. Contact the accessibility services. You're not allowed to leave your dog on the ship or in the room at any point. Remember, the ADA only applies in the US. You need documentation for each port you go to, and a veterinarian certificate, I believe it was called. Um, oh, it says airlines, but it's not supposed to say that. Ports which are owned by the cruise line are considered U.S. territory, and the dog is allowed. So, for instance, Royal Caribbean owns Coco Cay. Therefore, the dog could, without any issue, go into Coco Cay. They also provide a pet relief area, seen here, for my dog. Bring a power strip. These are just little extras. Bring a power strip because it seems like there's no outlets on a cruise ship room. It's terrible. If you need to charge your chair, CPAP, nebulizer, phone, it can be challenging as hell. Be mindful of allergies. The first day I was on the ship, they had this great party, but when I looked up, there was a bunch of latex balloons in the ceiling. They were going to be dropped at the end of the party, so I skipped that because I have a latex allergy. So inquire about those things. Another good thing is if you don't want to pay for the internet, bring walkie-talkies. It makes it easy to communicate with your group. And like I mentioned before, tipping in other countries go a long way.
And here's another little tip that I am starting to learn. In cruises, you have to pay for internet per device. If you bring a travel router, you can pay for that one device and share the internet across everyone in the room.
Disrespect.
Alternate means of travel, Amtrak. We mentioned the Red Cap services. Notify them about service animals,
Traveling.
and accessible restrooms are available in the accessible cars. Greyhound. I haven't used Greyhound in such a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And Megabus. I know I've used Megabus to get to Washington, D.C. If you purchase your tickets in advance, they are a lot cheaper. And the last time I used them, PCAs traveled for free. And that was the end.
Sorry, y'all, we went on and on, but there you go. Happy travels.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jose. We have one question. Anthony has your hand raised. You can unmute. But we really do want to try to hold all questions until the end. But Anthony, go ahead.
Jessica and Jose, thank you so much for sharing. I just wanted to ask you guys, what are some apps that you might use for accessible travel? Like, do you recommend like Trivago or hotels.com? Like, what do you guys use to travel? Like, what apps?
You mean to like look for the places?
Yes.
Yeah, so like for different, it all depends. They all have, an accessibility checklist, but I still tend not to trust them because they are a generalist. Recently we went to Syracuse, and when doing research, I was canvassing all of the uh, apps like booking.com and even the just the regular Google. At the end of the day, I uh, went to the actual hotel website to make sure that the accessibility was made there. And they're the best experts to tell you, because it can say that it has an ADA room with a roll-in shower, but it may not. It may be an
Wow.
ADA room with a tub.
Mm-hmm.
So I know
Yeah.
things have changed, but there's definitely apps out there. I just haven't used many of them. I'm old school and tend to do a lot of the research on my own.
You're old school, Jose?
Old
Good.
school.
I'm 45.
That's so old school.
That's not that old school, but you know.
No está vieja. No está viejo.
Anyway, thank you,
Yeah.
Anthony, for your question. Marilyn, you had your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. When you're traveling with your son, do you put him in a stroller? Also, do you carry like a pack and play for him? What do you bring for the baby? Because you're bringing a lot of stuff for yourselves, both of you. But what do you bring for the baby?
He did. Well, I did bring his stroller. And I got really lucky. The place that he's been twice is family, so everything we need is there. There's, I'm Puerto Rican.
Okay.
We like roaches. We have a lot of young babies. Um, so, so we were all set in that department. But however, we did go to a hotel, and my cousin, they were gonna. We didn't ask in advance, but when we got there to check in, they asked if we wanted a pack and play for him. A lot of hotels have them now.
Yes.
So you can, if that's something you need, you can do that in advance.
I was
And
unlucky, and they didn't pack me this time.
Anybody else have a question for these two wonderful people before we move on that hasn't asked a question yet?
And I do bring his stroller. Also, if I didn't say that, I do.
Yes, you did.
It's something else to check at the gate. Fun.
Fun.
Or pack into the car.
Now, question: when you push the stroller, how do you do it since both of you are in wheelchairs?
You know what? Not to toot my own horn here, but I'm a really good driver at my chair. So it's second nature. I was more bound by fear in the beginning, especially when he was a newborn. Like I was like, oh God, I'm gonna kill him. He's little. I'm gonna crack his skull open on the concrete. But no, now I can just basically do it with my eyes closed, no pun intended. I'm sorry. Um,
Marilyn, she's like a mule. There's a picture or a video of her with a Christmas tree strapped to her chair, something in between her legs,
I was
something on
pushing
her
the
side,
stroller
and pushing the stroller.
and I
Oh
had
my
Liam on my
God.
lap. Yeah.
I should get that picture. That's yeah.
You guys are amazing. Thank you, because this is and this
Thanks to the
leads a
both
whole
of you.
whole nother perspective to everything. So
It does.
really appreciate it. We're going to move on to our next speaker if nobody else has any other questions, because we have two more speakers to get to before we open the floor to like general discussion here. Our next speaker is Marilyn Tucci. The woman needs no introduction. She is an advocate for many, 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 many years. Way back on the stoop in Brooklyn, she was advocating already in the 50s and 60s, but she'll tell you. But really, Marilyn's stories are about traveling, I guess, with a cane and with a dog when you think about it, because she did both. So, Marilyn, it's all yours.
Okay, and thank you. And also with 4 little children.
That too.
So thank you for the introduction. I'm going to start with being myself, like a mother. I had 4 sons, and having visual impairments. You know, this is why I'm curious how Jose and Jessica did it, with their son traveling, since they're both in wheelchairs. Sometimes you have to improvise with children when you're traveling, and you have to sort of like tie them together, as I say. Years ago, they used to have these things, these straps that used to go over the children. Some people thought it was cruel, but if you can't see your children and you got to keep them near you, it's something that parents, who are blind should use. But getting back to traveling, I traveled with a cane. I did a lot of traveling by myself. My husband was in the military, so where he was stationed, I would go. I used to take Greyhound. When they brought up Greyhound, that's something I haven't taken in years. And when I was using a cane, we didn't have fold up canes back in the day. It was a white, heavy cane, and it did not fold. I wish it would have. And it was a little heavy to use, but it helped you get around. And traveling with it, of course, like I said, was always a major issue because there was nowhere for you to fold up this cane and put it. So you were constantly holding it, and you had to make sure it was always out of the way of people who can see, like you didn't trip them with the cane, or you didn't, get into any holes or anything with this cane. And then as my children got older, I made a decision that I didn't want to use a cane anymore. I never liked using the cane. To me, it was a stigma. I'd rather use a dog. So I decided that I was going to get a guide dog. And the first time I applied for a dog and they accepted me, I applied to all the schools, and then I chickened out. And I was working, and everybody said to me, well, what are you afraid of? I said, I'm afraid of entrusting my life to a dog. And they go, well, you entrust it to a stick? And that made me like change and say, you know what, you're right. And as I've said, I've traveled a lot by myself with, not always with other people. It's nicer to travel with people, but it's also a good experience to travel by yourself, because that's how you learn with a disability how to get around. It gives you better mobility. So I got a guide dog, and that gave me the ultimate freedom. It also solidified my bond, with the dog, knowing that I could trust this dog with my life and I could go anywhere I want. All my dogs, except for the dog I have now, Chloe, everyone has flown on planes. they've been on boats, ferries, cars, vans, walking, trains, Amtrak, Long Island Railroad, New York City subways, everything they've been exposed to. When the pandemic hit, it really changed things a lot for me in my way of thinking of traveling. So I didn't go into the city for quite a few years. And I think it was last June, I did go into the city with the dog, and I hadn't been in the city like in almost 5 years by myself. But I really wasn't by myself because I took Brandon with me. And the dog did a great job guiding me. And I thought to myself, if I was using a cane, I would have so many more problems trying to figure out where it's so much easier to tell the dog, find the seat, find the steps, find the elevator, find the bathroom, find this, find that. The find command is wonderful with the dogs. It really, like I said, enables you to move more freely because with the cane, you're always figuring out where am I. That's my outlook, not everybody else's. So some of the stories I can tell is when I was in Florida with two guide dogs ago, with my guide dog Anna, I was with a friend and we stayed at the Villages for 7 days. And everything went smooth. Everywhere I went in Florida, no problems with the dog. Flying there, no problems with the dog. Coming home in Orlando at the airport, there was a problem with the dog. Well, it really wasn't a problem with the dog. It was the TSA agents were giving me a hard time. They had asked if I would take the dog's harness off. And I said to them, no, under the law, I said, I don't have to take the harness off. This is a guide dog. And they wouldn't let me through. They were giving me a hard time. And, I know the Carriers Act and I know the laws. Whenever you travel, I always tell people with a disability, know the laws wherever you're going. Going to another country, know their laws. Going to another state, know their laws. Going on a boat, know the law. Going on a plane, know your laws. It's very important. So I knew right away that this was going to be a major issue between me and them. And it was really this woman that started it. She says to me, she said, you have to take that thing off the dog. I said, you mean the harness? I said, no, I don't. And my friend finally said, because she saw that, I wasn't going to budge. She goes, please, I just want to leave. And she goes, please, Meryl, please don't make a big scene. I said, I'm not making the scene. They are, So she said, please just take the dog's harness off so we can get out of here. I said, okay. So I took the harness off, put it on the conveyor belt. And then the woman goes to me, okay, walk through that, what is that called? The security thing. She goes, okay, walk through it. So I walked through it with the dog. And of course, the dog has some metal on its leash and its collar. So the thing went off. And I explained to her what it is. She goes, can you take the collar? I said, no. I said, that I will not do. I need to have control of the dog at all times. So with that, I said, you could wand the dog if you're having a difficult time. Just take the wand and wand the dog. Now, there were 3 men there, but I didn't know there were 3. I only thought there were 2. And I said to one of them, I said, I would like a supervisor to come over because she's harassing me. And they said she is the supervisor. And I said, well, there's somebody above her. So with that, she asked my friend to hold the dog and for me to go back through that security thing. I go back, nothing goes off, no alarms. Now I'm taking the dog back from my friend and I'm trying to get the harness off the conveyor belt when she says to my friend, oh, you'll have to go through that again, the security, because you touched her dog. And I could feel my blood boiling now, trying to compose myself. And my friend went through it, and the woman was still giving me a hard time. And she asked me again to to take something off the dog. And I yelled it, lady, now you're pushing it. I said, you already broken the law a couple of times. I said, you wait till I get back to New York because you are in trouble. So with that, I think they just got tired because they saw I wasn't going to buckle under them, and they let me go through. And I was infuriated by what happened. So when I got back to New York, I contacted, I think it was TSA. I contacted the airlines, and I also contacted the airport. And I told them I want the videos foiled immediately. And they all looked at the videos, and they saw, and they said she was harassing you. Why? They had no clue. Never did nothing. Don't even know the person. But they were reprimanded. They were all demoted. They weren't fired. They were all demoted and retrained, they told me. And usually they don't really tell people that, but they sent me an apology letter, which my agency still has on file. And that was a system change I did, because the following week they were expecting through that airport 3,000 blind people going to the NFB convention. And they definitely didn't want to have any problems with any of them. So, you have to always stand your ground. You can't back off. You try to do it in a nice way and be composed, because I always say you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. But sometimes you got to throw a little bit of the vinegar in these things. And I've gone to Florida many, many times. In fact, when I went to Disney, I've also been to not only Disney, but I've been to Great Adventure and Hershey Park. And all my guide dogs have gone on rides with me. Not all the rides, but many of them. And I have pictures of them on some of the rides with me. So they're really good with accessibility with blind people and with blind people with guide dogs. I'm not going to take up too much more time because I know there's other people that have to talk. But does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, what was the experience like, Marilyn? This is Anthony, by the way. What was the experience like when you were on the rides with your guide dog? Did they enjoy it? Did they get sick from it?
No, none of my dogs got sick.
Thank God for
at
that.
first they were a little leery, oh, what is Marilyn doing? Crazy Marilyn, what are we doing now with her?
That's so funny.
My dogs live an exciting life with me. Let's put it that way. They're not bored. Brandon can attest to that.
Oh boy, I bet.
So, no, they would just sit, like the people that were, helping you on the rides would tell me, I went on a log flume ride at Great Adventure. They were a little leery about it, but we had a strap to go around the dog too. The dog sat up between my legs and I held onto the dog.
Aw.
And the dog enjoyed it. They liked the wind in their face, just like people. Oh. And, some of the other rides were more mild than I went on. I think the log flume was the scariest,
Marilyn, I have to stop you for 1 second because I was at Adventureland a long time ago when I was at camp, Helen Keller.
Mm-hmm.
I would go on the log flume. And this is crazy. I would go on the log flume, and then I was like, "Oh God, now I'm gonna get wet," and I didn't like that feeling at all. So I was
but I think it's fun because you're not expecting it, and because you can't see what's happening, it's a real fun experience.
Because I like the feeling where because my mom and I were at Adventureland a long time ago, and my mom and I went on a pirate ship. And I'm going to be honest with you, Marilyn. You want to know something? She got sick.
Oh.
She got sick from it. And she's like, I'm not doing this again. And I'm like, I look at her I mean, I don't blame you because if you go on another ride, you're going to get sick and I don't want that. But going back to traveling, do you use any AI to travel? Does AI do you travel
Back in
anymore?
those days, we didn't have anything like that. You have to remember, I'm kind of old. So when you traveled, you would just
You ain't that
call.
old, Marilyn.
Oh, yes, I am. Trust me.
You ain't that old.
But you would call like when, before all the security, before 9/11, I would just call an airline. I used to fly every other month down to Virginia to visit a friend of mine because we were very close.
Oh, my aunt lives
And
in
all I
Virginia.
would have
My
to
aunt
do
lives
is
in
call
Virginia.
the airlines and tell them I'm coming on with a guide dog. I didn't need any paperwork. You know, my husband would drop me off at the airport after work. I'd go in there, and the people got to know you because I was doing it so frequent.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there was a part of it because I would change planes in I think it was Reagan Airport in Washington D.C.
Mm.
And they actually, when they saw me, they'd say, "Don't even bring her into the building. Bring her right to the next plane,"
Oh,
because I was
God.
on this little tram. So people get to know you, and I would tell them, "I'll see you all in 2 months. I'll be back in 2 months." But it's a good experience. And years ago, it wasn't as to me. Now it's become very detailed what you have to do. Even to fly on certain airlines now, you need paperwork for your dog. Like Jessica was saying, you never needed anything like that. You know, um, you have to alert them now. And people that are blind or with disabilities, guide dogs, they always board first,
Right. Yep.
and the ones with children, board next, and
Right.
then everybody else
You got
boards.
to bring your kids.
And I always tell
Spouse.
them that I
Yeah.
would like the bulk seat. It's the biggest seat, floor wise, so the dog could lay there. And when Jessica was talking about like bathrooms and stuff, it's very hard because those bathrooms on the planes are very, very small.
Oh, wow.
So when I had to use the facilities there, I had to ask the stewardess, "Can you please hold my dog?" You know, So, there's a lot of things that you take into consideration when you have a disability and you are traveling, especially if you're going somewhere by yourself.
Of course.
Because
Of
I've
course. Yeah.
flown to the Carolinas by myself. I went to places, Top Dog Workshop. I didn't know it was sold there the first time I went. And people said, "Who you going with?" I said, "The dog." "You're going by yourself?" And I said, "No, there's thousands of people in the airport." So I said, "I'm going to be with a lot of people." But, sometimes you get people that are afraid to travel by themselves.
Of
They're not
course.
sure of themselves. They don't know what to ask, you know. So,
They get scared.
yeah, it is a scary feeling. I mean, I went to Hawaii with a baby when my husband was stationed, and I used a cane. I had a white cane that didn't fold in an infant. And I flew from here to California, and I decided I was going to take a tour of California. Never been to California, and I
Mm.
just happened to hook up with this nice taxi driver. And I said, "If I pay you, would you take me to San Francisco?" And he's like, "San Francisco's not around the corner. You're in LA right now." I said, "Yes, but I am going to Oakland to fly out of Oakland. So he decided, "Hey, pay me and I'll drive you there." But this was years ago. Like I said, things were a lot different back then.
Oh, I bet.
But I think traveling was a lot easier than it is now.
Right. Yes, definitely. Now, Jessica and Jose, I know you had said something. I'm sorry, Jessica and Jose, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Anthony. But I just wanted to say that you guys, when you guys brought up different languages, I speak like many different language, like I bendito, like 20 different languages. So I would be the perfect candidate for translating in whatever language they speak, whether if they speak Japanese, whether if they speak Polish, Italian, or vice versa. I would be the right person to translate.
You speak 20 languages. What the hell? God bless. You
Yes,
barely
Kevin.
speak English.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I even taught myself.
Get out of here. You could be making big money being a translator. What's wrong with you?
That's so funny you said that because I might be going to college to study foreign languages, believe it or not.
Hey. huge success to you do that.
Yes.
I think we were talking more though, like with the seat pan, like having it maybe in English and Spanish, because a lot of the people who do the work on the back end, they are Spanish speaking people. So, to have the instructions, I guess, in both languages would
Of
be easier
course,
than that.
yeah. But I'm sure they do carry like Italian or like the languages that I speak.
But to read the paper, because that paper goes on the pan. So, like,
right.
I don't know if they would. I don't know. We're just praying for the best.
Yep, fingers crossed. But on another note, I do want to say those were amazing words that you had said. You might as well book the flight ahead of time so you don't. So you're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna miss out on my flight. Like I'm gonna miss out on my opportunity to bring like my suitcase. So might as well do it ahead of time.
Well, Anthony, when I pack, my luggage that goes on a plane with me is always full of my dog stuff.
Oh, wow.
None of my personal things. I own plenty of food for my dog, the dog's heartworm, the dog's flea stuff, brush, comb. And they're like, oh my God, everything is for the dog. I said, yep. And it stays with me.
So it's like a portable.
Yeah, because sometimes you can call the hotel and ask them if they could have a bag of food delivered. Yeah, but I always like to have enough food, when I'm traveling for the dog.
I would say this is for me to snack on the plane, and it is my flea treatment.
If I did that, I would bring my Little Bites muffins. But thanks to Amazon has a lot of things like for travel, or like Amazon nowadays is like the best source.
Well, this dog I have now, she's been on the ferry. She's been on the Long Island Railroad. She hasn't been that many places. I have her a year already. But hoping maybe next year I might fly again. I'm not sure.
To Hawaii.
Well, yeah, I want to go to Hawaii before I die because I used to live there. Damn. And all my friends have passed away that lived there.
You actually lived in Hawaii?
Mm-hmm.
Aloha. Wow.
All right, anybody else have any other questions for Marilyn before we move on to our final speaker, and then we'll get into discussion? You ask more questions of Marilyn, she could be here for hours talking about everything she's ever done, because this woman's full of stories, that's for sure.
Oh, I bet. Now, Jessica, since I'm on Long Island...
Anthony, we're going to move on now.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, our next speaker is Chris Murphy. He is a blind traveler. He's been traveling for years, and he's going to share some of his experiences.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Murphy. Thanks for introducing me. Before I talk about those experiences, I'll just give a brief description of myself. I am a half Native American, totally blind individual sitting in my bedroom using the computer. I'm also one of the co-coordinators for the accessibility working group for Downstate New York ADAPT, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Southern Minnesota ADAPT, and we have partnered with Downstate for this workshop. So, as Brandon said, I have been traveling by myself for many, many years. I started flying alone in 2003, and I remember that first experience flying back from Minnesota, where I live now, and that was without a cell phone, believe it or not, and that was an interesting experience because I couldn't call anybody to tell them where I was, but of course now, all of these years later, I have a cell phone, and it's so much easier to do that. But back then, when I started flying, I was still a minor at that time, so it was a little bit different. You had to be accompanied and all that other stuff. It was a little more nerve-wracking than it is now. All of these years later, it's gotten much easier, but one of the things that I always make sure to do is I always turn up my advocacy radar just a little bit and turn up my repetitive skills a little more when I'm flying, because I always need to make sure that they know, even though it says in my reservation that I need assistance. I always call the airline 24 to 48 hours before, even if it says it in my reservation, just to verify. And even when I get to the airport and I'm checking in at the check-in desk, I will also remind them that I need assistance getting through security to the gate and from the gate to the plane. Because if I don't do that, in my mind, I just always have to make sure that I'm always giving them an additional reminder. Even when I get on the plane, I always remind them just to make sure that I'm covered either way. I want to talk about a couple of experiences that I had over the last couple of years. And the first one is something that I really never expected to happen, but it did, and it ruined a little over a decade of good luck. So in 2023, I was flying to Washington, D.C., and I guess there were some thunderstorms happening in that particular area. So I got an email from my airline an hour or two before I was supposed to depart for the airport, and I live an hour and a half away. So I called the airline and I said, I see an email saying my flight's canceled. No justification as to why. So they said, well, we'll put you on the partner airline. I think I was flying Delta, so I think the partner was American. And I said, okay, that's fine. So they said you should get an email, within a little bit. So I gave you a little more time to get to the airport because I didn't have to leave quite as early. So got all the way to the airport, go to check in, and they were asking for that confirmation number. Well, turns out I never got the email because the flight that I was supposed to be on later that night ended up being full, and I'm calling people standing in the line telling them I'll be in D.C. later that night. Well, that didn't end up happening. So I'm standing there trying to figure out what to do, and I kept asking. So I said I need to be in D.C. either tonight, meaning that Friday night, or Saturday morning, without fail, because I had a meeting I had to go to that weekend. And they said, well, the best we can do is get you, I think it was like a 6:30 flight out of Minneapolis going through Charlotte and then to D.C. So I said, okay, that's fine. Now the next question. I'm an hour and a half away from the airport. It does not make any sense for me to go home. What can you do to, help me out? So they put me up in a hotel. It was the Courtyard by Marriott, right by the airport. And the person that was working there was also legally blind, so she had an idea of what to expect and really did an amazing job making sure that I had what I needed. And the shuttle came on time. I had called them prior to confirm, just to make sure that everything was successful. And then I got to the airport the next morning, and I asked the person. It was the same person that checked me in, or was talking to me about getting the hotel reservations. And I said, I'm just curious, why did you do that for me? And he said, well, we use those for people with specific circumstances. You had a specific circumstance that was going on, and, we felt that it was a good thing to do. So, needless to say, I got to D.C. just as the meeting was in progress, and I finally got there. But like I said, that kind of ruined about 10 years of bad luck. But the second experience that I want to talk about is, I'll combine two into one. As many of you know, they had started the Real ID enforcement earlier this year, and they had changed the regulations so that you could fly without one, and I had ordered mine and gotten all that paperwork done. And I was nervous because I was going to D.C. and I didn't have a real ID. Later on that year, of course, I was going to Connecticut. And the thing I was not sure about was what's going to happen to me. Am I going to get pulled aside? Are they going to take me somewhere else and I'm going to get transported from one person to the next because, I have to go somewhere else and do a whole process? Well, it turns out that was not the case. They actually let me through each time I flew without the real ID. Fortunately, I have one now. But the final thing that I want to talk about is an experience that happened coming back from D.C. going through Chicago. So I had a flight from D.C. to Chicago, Chicago to Minneapolis. Got from D.C. to Chicago successfully. And then we had, I think there were about 3 or 4 delays within the flight. Literally kept changing every 5 seconds. They told us, we're leaving at this time. Then we're going to leave at this time, so stay on the plane for an hour. And then they told us, well, now get off the plane for an hour or so and come back. And I was extremely nervous at this point because I had no clue how this was going to work because I had to go in the airport. I didn't know what was going to happen. There were 2 individuals, and I wish I had gotten their names, that both times we ended up getting off the plane kept checking on me every few minutes, and they ended up buying me dinner that night at the airport, which was totally unexpected. But you see those people sometimes that will go out of their way to make sure that you have what you need, even if they're complete strangers and they're not the TSA. But my final closing point again is that whenever you fly or you're traveling at all and you are alone, make sure you turn up that advocacy meter just a little bit more. Always provide those reminders, even though you have those reservations stating that you need assistance, because the worst thing that could happen is you could be forgotten about. Go up to some random person if you have to, which I've done maybe once, and ask them to find somebody or help you get to the plane. I always make sure to do that because I don't want to get left anywhere, and I always stand up. The minute they start calling the pre-board, I always stand up, unfold my cane, and just stand there so that they can see me. And I've been flying so much lately that some of the people know who I am because I travel so much these days. So those are my experiences, and I really haven't had any bad ones of getting stuck anywhere in the middle of winter yet, but we'll see what happens going forward. So thank you for listening to my stories, and I wanted to thank all of you for this great presentation as always.
Anybody have questions for Chris?
I do. You said that they were strangers that bought you dinner?
Yes.
They're trying to hit on you.
I really don't know if that's the case, but they literally would check.
Dinner.
They literally checked on me every few minutes when we had to get off the plane both times, and kept making sure that I was okay, and ended up bringing me back to the plane. And then we were going through the little food court there, and I was getting my wallet out to pay for the money, and she's like, "No, my sister's got it." I said, "Y'all didn't have to do that." And I feel bad. She's like, "Don't worry about it. We're all going through a bit of a stressful time right now because we finally got on the plane, we finally got back, but it was much, much later than it was supposed to be because of the weather."
All I can say is excuse the rest of us.
I didn't get home till 1 a.m, if that says anything to anybody.
Marilyn, you had a question? Mute. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Now we hear you.
Okay, sorry. Chris, I
Thought you
wanted
fell
you to
asleep.
share also, because it's something I didn't bring up, is also when you travel, and because I think almost everybody on here uses a paratransit, you can change where you live to a paratransit to where you're going. Like, I've been to Florida, so I use the Daytona one. I've been to the Carolinas. I've been to Missouri and things like that. So that's important. And when Chris came down here,
I was just going to say that.
was it this year? Yeah.
Yep.
This year, he actually changed his paratransit to ours, and it met him at the Port Jeff Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to share about that a little bit.
So,
And
Brandon
then we threw him out.
Yeah, hey. Brandon, Marilyn, and I and several others got together for a little lunch thing, and we'd been planning this for quite some time. And one of the things that I did was I sent an email to my paratransit and said I want to set up visitor status with SCAT on Long Island to be able to use their services while I'm in New York for a day to go from the ferry to Cheesecake Factory. So they communicated with the county and the bus company. I didn't have to do anything other than wait for verification. So a couple of days before, I called, made the reservation, and the bus picked me and my friend up at the ferry, brought us to the Cheesecake Factory, and we ended up taking the Uber back because it was quicker. But make sure, like as Marilyn said it, I'm going to do this anywhere I go to now that I have paratransit, to transfer those services and get visitor status, because you can use it.
Thank you, Chris. Anthony?
Marilyn, this is Anthony again. I'm sorry if I didn't bring this up, but do you use since we're both on Long Island, do you use Able Ride?
No, I don't. I'm in Suffolk.
Neither do I. I was supposed to get it, but unfortunately, with the coronavirus pandemic, it put a huge kibosh on my.
Years ago, I did, Anthony, because I have a lot of friends that live in Nassau. And I found out that it was a lot easier and less stress if I just took the Long Island Railroad and went to the town that they're in. And then, years ago, taxis were cheaper too. But either, somebody in their families would pick me up, or I'd meet them somewhere, or we'd meet on the border in Nassau and Suffolk. But also, like their fare is $4 each way. And our fare is $4. So you're talking $16 for a bus ride. And sometimes these bus rides give you a lot of stress. Wow. So to me, it's easier. Hop on the Long Island Railroad. There's less stress involved.
Can you imagine?
And just go to whatever town you're going to in Nassau. And I even take the train sometimes when I'm meeting friends in different places. I'll just get on the train and say it's a lot easier than using the paratransit.
Of course. Because during mobility, when I was at the Institute, New York Institute for Special Ed, we would go over like Able Ride rules. So then I was like, I was thinking, like, as I was doing the lesson, I was like, you know what? Now thinking about it, I think the LIRR is much more beneficial, if you will.
If you're going where the railroad takes you.
Yes.
Like Levittown, where I live, or like anywhere in Nassau, like Seaford, anywhere. That's interesting that you took the LIRR.
Yeah, well, like I had a friend in Farming. I had a friend in every town almost. I said to Brad, I know people here. I could get right off,
She has friends in high places.
But,
oh, gosh, do you?
And, it's funny, because to me, I found it more convenient to take the Long Island Railroad than to contend with the paratransit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Judy?
Yes, my name is Judy, and I'm from New York, and I'm from the Bronx by Yankee Stadium, and I went to the ACB convention, and I got paratransit day, and it was nice and everything like that, and I did have special accommodation on the airplane because I flew from New York to Buffalo, New York, to the ACB convention, and it was nice. But everywhere I go, I always ask for get a visitor's pass there, and also when I go out of the country, I also ask for special accommodation, and I always get that. And so right now, I'm legally blind, but I do go to school, and I have a degree. I'm a retired social worker, but I'm taking computer science because I don't know a whole lot about computers.
Judy, I'll be happy to help you with tech.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Of course. Anytime.
Okay. Where are you located?
I'm on Long Island. I'm in Levittown.
Okay, because my workers are on Long Island because I see them all the time. In fact, they come to my house sometimes, and sometimes since I'm working, I meet them at Helen Kelly at 180 Livingston Street. But I've been to the main building about several times as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anybody else have any questions? Because we're talking about all these wonderful things, but there was something that somebody did want to talk about. Unfortunately, that person isn't here anymore, but we'll talk about it anyway. But does anybody else have any other questions for any of our speakers so far?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, well, two things I want to talk about. And one of these things is very interesting because Marilyn mentioned that we went into the city, into Woodside, Queens on June 5th. And Marilyn comes from a time when you made phone calls to ask questions. Now, Marilyn got more information than I did looking things up by calling these people, even though she kind of didn't, right, Marilyn? Because, you spoke to several different people and nobody knew the answers to anything. But yet, when she made these phone calls, she got a lot of information. She got what she calls to ask questions about certain things rather than looking them up because that is what she's always done. And so it's still important in this day and age to make a phone call and ask a question if you don't know, if you're not comfortable with the information you're finding, to make a phone call. And I think it's still important to do that. And I never realized it, but when she did that, she made me realize, how inquisitive I can be. I ask questions, but certainly not the way she would have done it. So I think that's still, important to make phone calls, to call, but also to look up the information you need so that you have both, pieces of information. In our case, there was track work being done at the train, and she wanted to know, well, why is the next train not for 2 hours? So I looked it up, and it said it. But when she called, she went through how many different times of calling them to get the same piece of information?
I think I called 3 times. I like to verify things.
She likes to verify the stuff that's right in front of me in fine print. And then my brother's friend
called, too, to make sure I was getting everything correct. And I also look it up online.
But meanwhile, it's in front of me in fine print.
But
that's the problem. It's in fine print.
And saw the same thing, but I want to talk to a human.
Well, sometimes talking to a human is a better thing, because if you think about it, talking to a human, you get some information, but then again, sometimes you talk to a human, you're just as confused as when you started.
But if you're not sure where you're going, I was never in Woodside, Queens, and I was trying to ask him about the platform. I'm asking him where the steps are when I get off the train. Are the steps to the right or the left? Because I got to know what to tell my dog. In fact, you could share about when I asked the conductor, do I get off to the right or the left?
Oh, yes. And he told her one direction, it was the opposite direction.
Yeah. But that's all right. I always want to give my dog the correct, command. Find the door right to the door. Find the door left to the door.
But like Marilyn said, if it hadn't been for our sighted friend, we'd still be on that platform. And she's got excellent mobility. But we would still be on that platform.
Well, hopefully we would have been off by now.
I don't know. This is, what is this, October? End of October? Yeah. We'd still be sitting there.
But the important thing is when you have a disability, ask lots of questions to people.
I mean, I always ask questions, but I never realized when you make a phone call, sometimes you get a little more information, although it literally did say exactly what she found out. Track work. Anthony, your hand is up. Did you still have a question?
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that. Just make sure you get names of people. So in case something does club you and you feel so inclined to take it back to them, to fix for the next time, so to speak, because that's the one thing. If you see things online, you can take screenshots. You can't take a screenshot of somebody over the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't? What a shock.
Yeah, what a shock.
It's on video.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to add, I think, yeah, making phone calls is, of course, the thing you could do. But nowadays, you could ask, I don't know if you guys have done this, but you can ask, like, AI, like Meta AI or Chat GPT. They'll definitely give you information.
Well, like Marilyn, I'm old school, and I don't trust any of that stuff. So yeah. I still do it the old way. I still look things up.
I ask my Echo, of course, but...
Yeah, but I don't even trust that. I look it up right on the thing. There's an app for the Long Island Railroad. I look it right up on there. If I have a question, I look it up, and it'll usually tell me the answer I want to hear. If it's not a satisfactory answer, then I go find a satisfactory answer.
Right, yep.
That's like anything in life. If you don't find a satisfactory answer first, you keep going.
Oh, I always find my satisfactory answer.
Howard?
What? Oh.
You're muted.
I had a question.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, we'll get back to Howard. Who had a question?
This is Darlene.
Go ahead, Darlene.
This actually comes in perfect timing because I'm going on a trip tomorrow. I had to ask the hotel about accommodations because I have a tree nut allergy, and we don't always think about asking the places about our allergies as far as the shampoos, soaps, and stuff like that, because I call it going green and clean. But a lot of places are focusing on soaps that are relying on like tree nut type of basis, coconut oil, almond oils. And the person I spoke with was so kind. I mean, it was amazing. So I asked ahead of time, and I got a really, positive response.
It's always important to ask questions about whatever it is that you feel is, going to affect you, especially if you have an allergy or something like that. I know one thing I was always taught is when you go to a hotel, ask questions. Don't be afraid to, ask them. Marilyn has always said, if you go to the hotel, ask the front desk to have someone show you where the room, what's in the room and whatnot, where things are in the room. I haven't had to do that only because I've been with people, but when I have the opportunity to be alone, that would come in very handy. I can tell you one experience that just happened to me in September. The room didn't have a toilet paper roll on the little thingy. So I called downstairs and I said I need a roll of toilet paper upstairs. They didn't even have it. I looked everywhere in the room. They did in the bathroom. They didn't have it. So I called downstairs. They said, "Yeah, we didn't put it up there. We have to put it up there." So they brought it upstairs. But do you know they left it in the hallway?
Oh, see, that's terrible.
Really? That's awful.
And they did that because, I have to tell you why they said they did that. They didn't want to disturb me.
Did you have a do not disturb outside
no,
the door?
I had just gotten there. So meanwhile, it wasn't that long that it was sitting there. But can you imagine if I hadn't checked, I would have been sitting there. But we were about to go downstairs for dinner. And thank God somebody came upstairs. I don't know, actually, I don't even know why she came upstairs because I was getting ready to head down, but thankfully she did. Oh, she came upstairs to give me something. And when she came up, she said, "Your roll of toilet paper's on the floor." I said, "Are you kidding me?"
That's
they
ridiculous.
put it in the hallway outside the door.
Well, if you're asking for toilet paper, maybe they thought you like pooped or something and didn't want to knock, and like maybe that's what I would think if you're asking for toilet paper.
Now, mind you, the reservation said blind, need assistance.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what happened.
No idea.
I have no clue. All I know is it was hilarious because I'm sitting there going, well, one of two things would have happened. Either A, they wouldn't have come and I would have called downstairs, or B, what happened and somebody came upstairs. They had to give me something. I forget what it even was. Wasn't important. They came up and gave it to me and they said, "Your toilet paper is outside." I said, I can't even believe I have to call them in the first place to give me a roll of toilet paper. Why didn't you put it there in the first place?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and this was a Marriott, terrible. By the way. This was the Renaissance Hotel in Albany.
Well, you know my story when they threw out my dog bowl.
Yes.
When I was up in Albany.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get to Howard, who just raised his hand again, and then Tamisha. And you're muted, Howard. It's Alt-A to unmute. Oh, he's muted. He's unmuted, but we can't hear him.
If anyone's not able to speak, if you want to put your question in the chat, we can answer it.
Yeah, we can always, and you can always send it to us later, and we can try to answer your question afterward. Tamisha?
Am I coming through clearly?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay,
perfectly.
Great. Thank you. So this question is for those on the panel who are visually impaired or blind. I'm wondering, how do you navigate spaces, particularly airports, train stations, outside of the country? And if there is a language barrier, how do you handle that as well? So I'm an avid traveler. I travel extensively. But the biggest issue that I face with the visual impairment is going into other countries, most of the time smaller countries. But even in Europe, it has happened. And the reception that I get, very different from a more American or more tourist-heavy areas, with them knowing how to assist or support me, whether it's through a train station or an airport terminal. And the accessibility around signage. So if anyone has experience or advice or suggestions on ways to mitigate that, I'd be interested in hearing.
And anybody that's not on the panel that is blind that would like to give some perspective, please feel free as well.
Yeah, the only place I've been out of the country was Canada. And, I've been on cruises and things like that, but as I said, you have to look up their laws and contact like the airlines there or however you're going there, and and find out, get information, call the hotel where you're staying. If you're meeting friends in another country, ask them for information. But you can look up things online, how they treat visually impaired people or what they offer.
Yeah, I've actually never traveled outside of the country other than Canada, so.
Yeah, same here, Canada. I would say, me personally, I would go even as far as look up disability-focused organizations in that country and maybe possibly reach out.
Hello, this is Bob White. Can I talk?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
I've been waiting for you to talk all night.
Thank you, Brandon. The only time I've been out of the country on my own was when I had usable vision, and there's a big difference between having some usable vision and having really practically next to none. Certain countries, for example, in Europe, a lot of people know English anyway when you get there, and so forth. So you'll actually find people to understand you. But then there's other countries that don't. I have a friend who just came back from Japan. So there's very few people there speak English, and so he was fully sighted too, and so he always felt like he needed somebody to translate for him. I'm just going to suggest that if you're blind, not only do you have a visual disability, but you also have a communication problem, and now you're dealing with a double disability, and you may want to, depending on the country, you may you may just say, I need sighted assistance as soon as I get off the plane, with somebody that speaks English. I'm sorry, I don't have any more answers than beyond that point.
This is Judy, and some of the things you can do if going in a country, at least learn how to say hello to people in different languages, and that will give the person the attention. And learn to say a few things if you can practice in different language, like maybe the bathroom, and also a little bit about the country if you can. But it's good to actually, when people tell me how to say hello in their language, I usually write it down and put it in, separate it so I can know how to say it. I do have a speech problem as well as legally blind, but I try to at least speak, because when you speak to somebody, like if you say prevail or ni hao or some of that, somebody is going to get your attention just by speaking to them in their language.
The phones too are great. I mean, because you could translate a lot through the phone.
Google Translate, stuff like that.
Can I add something quickly? Because it's Miriam.
Yes, go ahead, Miriam.
On December 9th at the Haskell Library between 7 and 9, they're having a webinar on travel tips. So some of them may be helpful. I don't have their link, but you could call them and they could send it to you. And I'll just very quickly, I don't know the quality of it, but it's coming up. It's free. I would say give it a chance. It's say we'll explore apps. Oops, I kind of lost the link on my phone. I'm sorry.
Not to worry, I have it, and I will actually be including it in the resources that we send out with the presentation. So thank you for bringing that up, Miriam, because I now will remember to add that. So we have a bunch of resources that are going out with the presentation. We have the recording for those who miss it. We have any information that we find additional that we want to add on, and of course now that. So that's another resource. And I did, to some of you who are on some of the lists I'm on, I did forward that to everybody in case anybody was interested. So it is available there. If you didn't find it, I'll forward it again. But
sorry, did you say high school? Like
the Andrew Haskell Library.
Can I tell you something unrelated? I mean, yes, related, but not. We library hopped this year, and I went there. It's a great play section for kids. I just wanted to throw that out there. And it's cool because the books have the braille and all that. It's really nice. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
And if you need the bathroom when you're on the street, they have a good bathroom and a water fountain in the hot weather. I use them for many things.
So many good pieces of information that I never would have thought to ask.
Okay.
Thank you. So, anybody else have any other questions? Because I do want to discuss one more thing before we end, and this was brought up by text earlier to me, and I
Okay.
never thought to ask it, but anybody have any other questions first?
Well, I have some issues that were not discussed, and maybe people have had experience with some of these problems. I can't be upright that long. So when I would travel on a plane, that was an issue. I would ask them when I was making reservations if they could, if there are any seats available, could they sit me next to an empty seat? If I can stretch out, that's just what I needed. Not ideal, but that would get me through the flight. So that was always something. The other option would be buying two seats, which is rather, pricey. I don't think there's a law, and it's not a category commonly understood that people who can't be upright that long. I can't sit that long. I can't, you know, um, just be up that long, but I would travel. And that,
I have had issues with it because me myself, just sitting that
yeah.
straight upright is no good for me.
Wow.
And if even if the seat, I get some really great flight attendants who are amazing, and then I get some who are just like, absolutely not, you didn't pay for that seat.
Yeah, it depends on who's there, and their sensitivity and their empathy, and there's somebody struggling, and if it was an empty seat, sometimes they would ask the person, get me two seats, adjacent to each other. I pull up the armrest and I can stretch out, then I can make it. But otherwise, it's a struggle, and I dread, flying alone if I can't be sure that I can stretch out. The other thing that would be hard for me is getting my luggage up onto that gurney or whatever they call it, where it goes through the X-ray. And I've gotten nasty remarks. Well, you shouldn't travel if you can't take care of yourself. And I said, I can. I just can't lift my luggage, which was always very light, but I still couldn't lift it. What I just noticed in Paris a couple years ago is that they had a ramp from the floor that went up the gurney, so people didn't have to lift anything. And I'm sure I'm not the only person, would have trouble lifting, and that might be something that we could advocate for that would make traveling easier for a lot of people. What
Wow.
I would do in the end is usually just look for somebody who looked nice and friendly and healthy, and I'd say, can you just help me lift my luggage? But it's asking for extra help, and if I could have done it independently, I would have preferred that. And I have been treated nastily by staff. You shouldn't be traveling if you can't, do that by yourself.
Wow.
Miriam, did you ever think of bringing a doctor's note and alerting the airport that you can't lift things?
No, and that's a good idea. And actually, I did get a note from my doctor on advice from the DRA, Disability Rights Association, when I told them that I would sometimes get harassed if I was lying on a bench and I was taking up the bench, and why I must be a homeless person, or whatever people thought. And the doctor just said that she has a spinal disability. She needs to lie horizontal for a time period to relieve her back. I mean, I've been harassed at all kinds of places because I'm lying down on a bench to rest my back, and I got a doctor's note. And that's a good idea, though. That would explain things and could just, de-escalate any issue, or make it understandable why I needed help. It's a good
Yeah, maybe
idea.
that would help.
Yeah, it did help when I was lying down
Hmm.
and taking a break in places where, um, you know, others weren't lying horizontal, and they just assumed I was, homeless, drunk, or something like that. I mean, I always have something to read. I look like I'm fairly literate, but that often
Well, you know that
was
old
not enough.
saying, looks could be deceiving.
Yes, but that's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from anybody before we move on to the last topic? Oh, we have one more hand raised. Tamisha?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thanks for everyone who answered my question. So I do research because again, like I'm a very seasoned traveler, but what I was more getting to is if you're in these places and you know the law, right? And the law is going to say that all are welcome and there are people to help. But when it comes to being on the ground with the people, um, is what I'm really asking about, right? So like I knew when I went into Italy, there was going to be people in the airport to help me. But when I pulled up to the airport, you just see a bunch of people going by, right? So I'm thinking more of um, not necessarily the laws about accessibility, but the practice and how people navigate that. Because it took me a while to even figure out where do I go to check in to tell someone I'm here for my flight and I need assistance getting to the gate, right? The signs are in a different language, and most people will speak a different language. Um, and so it's really about those sorts of barriers, is what I was alluding to. Is not necessarily the law itself, but how people are practicing on the ground in these places when it comes to accessibility.
Did you call ahead to let them know that you're going to the Italian airport?
Well, yes. So when I
So
purchase
they knew
tickets,
to
it's always
expect
on
you.
my itinerary, and then you call the airport ahead of time. Well, the airline ahead of time and let them know. So all of that's already taken care of, right? But I mean, like when I actually when my Uber and that's a whole other thing about accessibility. But when my Uber pulls up to an airport, there's usually not someone on the curb that's expecting me to come at 10:08 to get me from this Uber, right? So I need to make my way from the curb inside the airport to someone who can get me to the place I need to go. And sometimes that part is what's inaccessible. Like those little more nuanced moments that are not these blaring accessibility moments, but more subtle things that typically can fall through the crack because there aren't systems in place. The continuum is not necessarily all the way connected at every step of the travel journey.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you on that one.
Okay.
Good to research that, actually.
Well,
Anthony, and then we're going.
I'm just curious, it's Kathy. But Tamisha, you're saying you get out of the Uber and you don't know how to get inside the building? And that's the problem? To get inside to get help?
Well, so that could be one. I've had that experience before, but I mean, when I go into an airport,
Yeah,
especially if it's an airport I've never been, right? There's usually
there's one thing you could use possibly. I don't know if you've heard of Be My Eyes. It's an app.
I have heard of it. I know that it's fairly new, so I haven't used it.
Right, because maybe you should try that like just in your local area once. Try it out like when you're just going around the neighborhood or something and see how good it works to start learning how it works. And I mean, there's Be My Eyes. There may be a couple other apps too. I'm not, let me see, did Bob White leave? Yeah, because he might know of some others. But I've heard of this one at the Greater New York Council of the Blind meetings, Be My Eyes. And
And
they
also
actually, and you
Seeing
use your
AI.
phone.
Seeing AI. Yep, that's another one.
Seeing AI,
So
that
these are
describes
apps,
everything around you.
Yeah, these are apps that you could use, but the thing, before you use them in an unknown place, I would say try them out someplace familiar. Like, just going to a store and use them just to see how they work and get, comfortable with them before you go someplace unfamiliar.
Be My Eyes has been around for quite a few years now, about
Okay.
5 or 6 years now. So
Mhm.
it's fairly popular. In fact, it's very popular.
Right.
Because it's free. In
okay.
fact, we have several volunteers from Adapt that are Adapt members that are Be My Eyes volunteers, and they will tell you that the calls they get from blind people needing assistance are very, very varied, but they're very, people need different kinds of help. So
Right.
the apps are there to do that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that would be something I'd say take a look at at least to help you out.
Another alternative is Ira. You can get a free few-minute call. There are places, of course, too, where you do have free time for that as well, or you can pay for minutes if you need to.
Right. Anybody else have any other questions? Because I do want to spend a few minutes on one topic that we, as I said, we didn't have a chance to discuss yet. So. Okay.
Yeah. Oh wait, I didn't have a question now.
Okay, go ahead, Anthony. Please make it quick.
I just wanted to point out that I know one person that was a flight attendant, and she was able to get flights quickly. My grandmother from Florida.
Okay.
And wow.
All right, so
wait, let me add one thing.
Go ahead, Miriam.
Very quick piece of good news. It's traveling in New York City on the bus, and I was hopefully part of the catalyst that got this done. They announced today that they're going to put benches in all the bus stops. I've been advocating for that for almost a year with my community board, and they sent a letter to the Department of Transportation, and also my local electeds, 3 of them co-signed a letter further to support that, and it was just announced today. I don't know really if I had anything to do with it, but I was very pleased that we got a bit of response, also asking for shelter from severe weather, the heat, the snow, for everybody. But the benches are the first step, and it is a step because they had never agreed to this before. And we've been asking. I've been involved with this for a year. It was just announced today, so I'm kind of elated to hear some good news. That's all.
Congratulations, you're a good advocate.
Wow,
yes,
that is
congratulations.
amazing.
Okay, so we're going to talk about barriers on airlines with COVID-19. Now, this is a topic that was asked to me this morning by a particular person who is no longer here. He left a little while ago, and we're sorry that he left. But I want to discuss barriers that people have noticed on airlines during COVID. I know it was brought up, a couple of things were brought up before about barriers that people have reported, but anybody else notice any differences? I mean, other than the obvious, people don't want to touch you anymore because they're scared of, getting sick, which is understandable. Anthony?
Well, like you had stated before, I think they're afraid they're going to get you sick, and I think another thing is with regards to barriers, I think maybe lack of lack of vehicles like planes, cars.
Okay, Chris?
I think I did fly a couple of times during COVID, and I really didn't. And of course, it's still kind of prevalent now. But for me, I really didn't notice too many barriers, of course, other than needing to wear a mask literally the entire time in an airport from start to finish. I really didn't, as many times, I think I traveled once during the full onset of it, really didn't see too many barriers that I was able to pick out when I was flying really during the hard part of the pandemic.
I know people had brought up in the beginning of all of this, people who are hard of hearing and can read lips, they could not read lips because people's masks were on. It also poses a sound issue for, muffled sound if a person is wearing a mask. As I said, I wish this one person was here. He would be able to explain what he really wanted to discuss, but I think one of the most important things is now things have gotten better with COVID, with traveling, because again, you're not wearing masks. The service is now back to the way it was, with maybe some variation.
Yeah.
So there are things that are back to some normalcy, but in the beginning of it, I know people had said it was very, very hard to travel as a disabled person, but particularly, I suppose, as a blind person or as somebody who's hearing impaired or deaf, because you're facing different barriers relating to your vision. People don't want to touch you to help you because they want to observe social distance, etc. But again, now it's a lot better. Tamisha?
One thing I noticed is I have some usable vision, and usually if I get assistance at the airport, I would ask them just to walk, and and I can walk as well. But there were times that they insisted that I use the chair, and they pushed me in the chair. And I assumed it was because they didn't want the physical contact of the holding of the elbow. So that was a barrier. Well, maybe not a barrier, but I think it was a barrier to my independence because I can physically walk and have enough usable vision to gauge, my immediate space. But being pressured or forced to sit in a wheelchair and be pushed through the airport, I think was a bit of a barrier to my independence as a traveler.
Anybody else notice anything that they
I
maybe have
do.
seen?
Well, I
For
want to
me,
mention
everything has
something.
been
Go ahead, Jessica, first.
everything, like all the flights and everything is a connection. It's been really hard to travel with direct flight. And that's ever since COVID happened and I asked, like, why can I get a direct flight? They all say it relates back to COVID. I don't know with the way they were scheduling. I don't know if it's the different type of planes that they're bringing um into the different sized airports. I don't know, but I don't know, it seems to be a direct um issue to COVID.
Now that's interesting.
Mhm.
That is
It's
definitely
a
interesting.
nightmare, and I love to fly, but in that sense of getting direct flights, it's been an actual
I was
nightmare.
going to say, I can imagine that'd be hard. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Um, Even before COVID, if you were blind, they would automatically offer you a wheelchair. They used to do that to me all the time, and all my blind friends too. Sit in the wheelchair, and we're like, no, we can walk. No, it's better for you if you sit in the wheelchair.
They do that to me too, and it's so irritating.
Yeah, it really is, because you're saying, no, I don't need a wheelchair. Just because you can't see doesn't mean that you can't walk.
I think it's because they can get through faster.
Yeah, for them it's easier,
because we don't have to hold on to them. But I told them, like, I can walk. Let somebody that needs it use it. And I've told them that many times. Or you get the ones, and I don't know if anybody's had this problem, with language barriers, trying to explain that stuff to them. It's very difficult sometimes to explain. No, I don't want the wheelchair. Just give it to someone that can use it, that needs it, because I'd rather walk, because if I'm going to sit on a plane for an hour and a half to 2 hours, it gets a little, you need to get up and walk around.
You need that exercise.
Exactly. Yes. And then you
But
then
you
you'd
know,
be
they did
grateful
this
for it
before
after.
COVID, so I don't think it has anything to do, you know, with COVID or what happened, because they did this before.
I think that they're concerned that if you fall, there'll be a lawsuit of liability if you fall and hurt yourself, and they don't know for sure that you won't because they don't trust, your walking ability, and they're afraid that they'll be sued if you fall.
I think that's with any disability too, is they're very, very afraid of, it goes back to an old stigma of, blind, so he must be brittle. Or he must be whatever. Or my favorite, of course, is, oh, he's blind, he must know sign language. No, but I know Braille. We used to get that all the time at the Institute. We were told, people would come in and they would ask us, oh, so you know sign language? No, but I know Braille.
This is Bob again. I was told by a person, a meet and assist once. He says this was in a smaller airport. I forget where. He goes, please, if you don't need a wheelchair, please tell us because it's more work for us to bring the wheelchair. So usually, what I do is I say I need a person, please, no wheelchair. And if they insist, I say don't. But that's harder for you. I absolutely don't need it, and it's easier for all of us if I don't have it. That's all I say, And I've traveled quite a few times. I've only gotten sat in a wheelchair once or twice.
I have only flown once round trip to Texas, and it was during COVID. And actually, I was not offered a wheelchair. At that particular point, I went through JFK and I went into Austin, Texas, and both ways were fine. No wheelchair was offered or anything. The only issue that I could ever say happened, and again, I flew during COVID, so I can't compare before or after. The only notable issue that ever happened on that plane, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me, was the woman who chose the moment when we turned away from the gate to want to get off the plane. So that's literally the pilot came on and he said, ladies and gentlemen, we had to turn back to the gate because somebody on this flight chose this moment to want to get off the plane. Does anybody else want to get off this plane?
I also want to mention one other thing, which I don't do enough of. I think at the beginning, if I like stairs and escalators because it's faster than using an elevator. So if you can apprise, inform them of that as well, I think that helps. The other issue, we'll bring this up, is bathroom. I usually get a female meet and assist, and of course can't accompany me into the men's room. Now that's never been a problem for me. I don't know if it's been a problem for anybody else, but I have an interesting story. I was actually once traveling with a sighted friend who's from Jamaica, and this must have been a cultural thing. I had to use the bathroom, and she walked in with me to guide me to the urinal. And the other guys they're grumbling, what are you doing here? And she's like, what's their problem? So anyway.
That's interesting.
So.
Right, does anybody else have anything to add? Otherwise, we will end. 20 participants. Button. Start button. Mute my audio. The meeting is mute my audio. Right. Well, on behalf of ADAPT,
I think another thing to request is talking elevators too.
Yes. Well, talking elevators is one thing, but for those of us who read Braille, actually, I'll tell a quick story about that. When I was in Albany this past week, we were staying at the Hampton Inn, and there was only one working elevator. And so I was riding in an elevator with a bunch of sardine, in a sardine form with about 20 other people packed into this elevator. And there were times where I was going up and down by myself. And I have to tell you that, thank God I do know Braille. Because if you're not paying attention to where the elevator goes and what floor it's on, because usually I have a pretty good sense of that, where I can, hear the beeping when it gets to floor after floor after floor.
Uh-huh.
the elevator goes so fast you can't even really pay attention because people are
I
moving
know.
around and whatever. So I have thank God I could do this, because if I didn't want to ask somebody what floor, I could just stick my hand out the door and read the sign.
I do the same exact thing.
So
Actually.
it's handy to have, but thankfully that exists. But yes, the talking elevators would be good. In fact, I was at a nursing home 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and they had a talking elevator, but for all that elevator's good for, it didn't do anything. It just, all it was doing is.
Yeah, that doesn't work very well.
Oh my god, that's so annoying.
I could not understand a word it was saying. All I heard was.
Yeah, it was like glitchy.
Like, what on earth is this talk? I don't know if maybe it was broken, whatever, but if you're going to talk to me in a language I can understand. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
But,
people easily get
talking elevators a good idea.
Yeah.
But the least priority. But on behalf of ADAPT, Downstate New York ADAPT, and Southern Minnesota ADAPT, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We had a really good discussion, I think.
Thank you very much, all of you, for coming tonight.
Yes, and thank you so much. If you want to know any more about ADAPT, you can visit our website here in New York, dnyadapt.com. You can contact us at 631-333-6229. Again, I'll send this all out. Or you can email us at dnyadapt@gmail.com. We'll also put some information in about how you can be part of us and how you can connect with us. And Minnesota is the same setup. Their website is smnadapt.com, and theirs is smnadapt@gmail.com.
We also do have a phone number as well. If you want to get a hold of us by phone, it's 507-594-8779.
So on behalf of all of us here, our panel, our speakers, I want to thank all of you for being here, and it was a pleasure, and we'll hope to do this again next year.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good day, Jose.
Bye.
If he's still on.